June 6, 1944 was a day that united this country and the world. This morning I spoke exclusively with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who is here leading a very large bipartisan Senate and House delegation, about the lessons of Normandy for this hyper-partisan politics of today. Madam Speaker, we're here in a hallowed place. Your thoughts about the service members, the sacrifice that they made 75 years ago?
Imagine, they were children. Many of them were teenagers, 17, 18, 19 years old, 20, 21, very young. And they had so much courage. And when you listen to them and they tell their story, it's different. Some say I was very afraid. Others said I was just praying to God. Others were like, I didn't know how to swim, and so I was just hoping for the best. But they all have their individual stories. One I like to tell is when we were here in 70th anniversary.
5 years ago.
There many more veterans. That's what's a little sad about this year. There are fewer veterans because 5 years have gone by since, and that's 75 years since, as you know, since the Normandy invasion. But I said to one, in the course of a conversation, I said, well, my uncle died at the Battle of the Bulge. And they said, oh yeah, we went there after. Imagine that they were here, and then they continued to fight, and then they were at another historic battle, which was one of the decisive battles of World War II, but this was historic. Normandy, it was a historic proportion, almost nothing to compare to it in the history of the world.
It was the greatest military operation in world history.
Yes.
And it brought America together with the Allies. That kind of leadership, where do we see that kind of leadership today?
Well, we always have to be hopeful, and being here on the 75th anniversary reminds us that we have an obligation to build a future with a peace worthy of the sacrifice that our veterans made then and that our veterans make all the time. We have to stay close to our vets and their families, and that's such an inspiration. It gives us a challenge to do better.
I was reading what you've written about your father. He was a congressman from Maryland, and he went up against the president, FDR, on the issue of letting refugees in. The Jews from Europe who needed to escape the Holocaust were being barred by the United States. And he really fought politically to open the doors. What does that tell us about America and how America should be welcoming to refugees and asylum seekers?
Well, again, he worshipped at the shrine of Franklin Roosevelt. He was a New Deal Democrat, and that was risk-taking for him to be, shall we say, begging to differ on the subject of the treatment of Jews in Europe, as well as entering the United States, and as well as establishing a country, a Jewish state in Palestine. But in our heart, the American people have hearts full of love. I have so much confidence in them. And our evangelical community, they have said to us in testimony that the U.S. refugee resettlement program is the crown jewel of American humanitarianism. So we just have to get it right, and that is to say, be respectful and understand that every country has a responsibility to recognize the humanity of these people.
Do you worry that the arguments we're having now about borders and immigration threaten the kind of response, that the values that these men fought and died for?
Well, we can never think that. We always have to be optimistic and positive, because what they did was so monumental and enables us to have our debates and differences of opinion. But we do have to remember the values that freedom isn't free. So, and part of that freedom is who we are as Americans. And who we are as Americans, no one said it better than Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan had the biggest voice for welcoming people to our country, and that we cannot close the door, or else we won't be the country that leads the world.
I was here when Ronald Reagan was here in 1984. I was here for that. And for all the disagreements over how to handle missile deployments in Europe, there were a lot of tensions then. But we didn't have the divisions with Europe that we have now. No. America is less respected in Europe than at any time in post-war history.
Well, let's build on what the positive possibilities are. I think everyone should reread Ronald Reagan's speech of that day. It's so beautiful, and it talks about the importance of alliances and working together. I'm really proud that we have, I think, the largest congressional delegation for international travel ever for this visit here. We have nearly 60 from the House and around 20 from the United States Senate, bipartisan delegations, and our delegation is 1/3 of them are veterans. So again, it is pretty exciting to be able to acknowledge what happened then with the ability to thank those who have more recently fought for our freedom. When we first invited for the trip, we said, well, we'll get a plane and we'll go to Normandy, as we did last time. And then we had so many people wanted to come, we had to get 2 planes, then 30 planes, and just an endless interest in being here. To pay our respects. We come with gratitude, we come prayerfully, we come patriotically to say to these people, you will never be forgotten, and we will always try to live up to the standards that you fought for.
Looking at that bipartisan delegation here of Democrats and Republicans joining together to celebrate the ideals and the sacrifices. We are so divided as a country right now. Do you worry about the politics right now, impeachment and everything else that's on the table, and how that can further divide us?
Well, again, with all due respect to your question, I'm not here to talk about impeachment, but I do say that on the subject of our veterans, we always strive to work in a bipartisan way. So this is not a departure from what we set as a standard. Wherever we can, we try to be as bipartisan, nonpartisan as possible. That's a comfort to the veterans.
What do you hope the President's message will be here today? What do you want to hear from him?
Well, I hope that it would be a message of unity, a message about how the unity that we had at that time to defend civilization. There was a lot at stake in that war, and people came together, all different kinds of, from different countries in Europe, and they were very different from each other at the time. There was no European Union. So hopefully a renewed spirit of collaboration and recognition of our dependence on each other. My favorite quote, we always talk about John F. Kennedy in his speech to citizens of America, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. The very next line in that speech, which I saw in person as a student, the very next line in this says, to the citizens of the world, ask not what America can do for you, but what we can do working together for the freedom of mankind.
Do you worry about NATO and the other institutions that have tied us together with Europe and kept the peace for more than 70 years?
Well, I was proud to work with Senator McConnell, and we worked in a bipartisan way with the Democratic and Republican leadership a couple of months ago to invite the Secretary General of NATO to speak to a joint session of Congress. And he was magnificently received, and it was the first time a Secretary General of NATO had ever been invited, but it was the 70th anniversary of NATO.
Was that a signal of support for NATO at a time when it is under criticism?
Strongly bipartisan, strongly and bicameral House and Senate, and it was, we wanted to observe the 70th anniversary, but we wanted to remove all doubt in anyone's mind of our commitment to the Atlantic Charter, to the transatlantic relationship, to the importance of NATO, and how it has kept the peace.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much.
Thank you, my pleasure. I'm so glad you're here. It's pretty exciting.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.